seen as something as negative as we might perceive.
I was just going to say, it looks like a rite of passage, to be honest, because they think, well, you know, I've been in, you know, makes it more legit for them, isn't it? You know, makes their, you know, their status go up just that bit more, and it's not really seen as a big deal. And, you know, I don't know, what did you want to add to?
No, I wanted to say that what that gentleman's comment was at the end was absolutely correct, which is that it's once you get them in, you keep them in prison. But what steps, what sort of measures do you have whilst they're in there to rehabilitate them when they come out? And I think that's the problem. Once you have a criminal record, it's very difficult for you to get a job. And so some just see it as a sort of they're entering a sort of route for life now, and therefore they go into prison, they learn what they can in terms of committing other, possibly more serious offences, and getting by like that rather than sort of a rehabilitative route.
Well, let's paint a picture now of crime in the UK. Could you tell us a little bit more about this, Sister Rukhsana? What is crime like in the UK? You know, the types of crimes and figures that we're seeing here.
Well, there have been recent sort of statistics from the Office of National Statistics, which state that between, when compared with figures from 2011, the crime has actually fallen by 8%. Now, they've given specific statistics. They're saying that 16% of motor vehicle theft it's been reduced by 16%. Criminal damage has reduced by 15%, 13% in robbery. However, things like a theft on a person, so pickpocketing, it's risen by 8%. Now, that doesn't really mean anything until you see that in 2011 they recorded 99,396 records of people being pickpocketed, whereas in 2012 it rose to 107,471. That's a great amount of people that have had something stolen from them. Murder's gone down by 13%. Attempted murder's gone down by 7.6%. And sexual offences have gone down by 3%. There are other statistics available which some contradict that. There was a crime survey for England and Wales, which is a slightly more qualitative statistics. They do face-to-face surveys, and they assess the experiences people have had, their attitudes and their perceptions. And rather than the 3.7 million that the Office of National Statistics said has quoted, they state that it's in actual 8.9 million that people have been affected by crime. So that's a divergence of 5.2 million
quite a big difference there.
Unreported crimes.
I mean, just off the back of those statistics, you know, we have heard, you know, everyone's heard it in the headlines, crime is on the decrease, we're seeing less and less episodes of crime. Sister Zainab, let's come to you. I mean, the statistics do seem to suggest that crime is on the decrease, but many more people feel really, really vulnerable. Why is this?
I think there's always this kind of difference that's going on in terms of, we're told these statistics that crime is on the decrease, yet we feel the environment is slightly different. So we're told that because of the media's attention, and we know this, that the media generally will focus on the most negative stories. These are the most crowd-pulling, the most eye-catching kind of stories. So of course they're not going to talk about, oh, today, you know, we haven't had any crimes today. You know what newspaper is going to say that? So they're always going to focus on these negative stories, and it will create, it will inflate maybe what is really there, and that's okay. That's a fair point. Even the apparent rise of sexual abuse cases. This is sometimes some people have said that this is down to the Savile case. So of course, you know, if there's an environment where people are coming forward, and there's something that's very difficult for people to come forward to say that this is what's happened to me and I want justice. Many people stay silent for the rest of their lives when they're inflicted with this kind of crime. So more people have been coming forward, there has been more attention on this within the media. So there can be this feeling that it is growing. However, at the same time, there is definitely a change. So the sister mentioned those two statistics about personal theft, pickpocketing and mugging and things like that. That is definitely something that is on the increase, and maybe it relates to even the area that you're in. I know personally people who have been mugged at cash points. Their phones have been taken from them. My bag got stolen the other day. So this is something that maybe, you know, there is another side to this. And even criminologists, other criminologists have said that, you know, these statistics, they're not necessarily reflecting the full picture of what's going on. Even in terms of crimes through the internet, even white-collar crime, that's something that doesn't really get spoken about that much at all. Fraud.
I mean, crime is, there's such a different, you know, a wide spectrum of crime. You know, just off of what you said, Sister Zainab, I think it's really interesting that we're touching on the actual culture around crime and the context of why crimes are being committed. Sister Ayan, do you think that the recession and the economic downturn that we've experienced, do you think that has had any effect on the levels of crime?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've just found like many articles going back even as far as 4 months talking about shoplifting on the increase. And a lot of the things that were being stolen were food items like staple food like meat and cheese.
We covered that on the show as well.
Yeah, which is really unbelievable, because you think in this day and age, you know, people shouldn't have to steal food in order to kind of stay afloat. And, you know, some of the articles have even reported that a 200% increase, that there was a 200% increase on last year's figures in the use of food banks in the months of April to July this year, which is when the changes to the benefit system occurred. Organisations like the Salvation Army said that they're handing out more than 300 food parcels in the cities to families who can't afford to buy food for themselves. And even as far as the Metropolitan Police spokesman who said Lambeth Police have given out 75 vouchers for the Norwood and Brixton Food Bank in the last 6 months. The vouchers were issued by response team officers who identified individuals or families in crisis during their day-to-day work. So all of these shoplifting episodes are coming down. It kind of boils down to the fact that people can't afford to feed themselves. You know, people are going into supermarkets, are going into places like Greggs. There was even a woman who was reportedly brought down to police station because she stole a tuna baguette. You know, and it's things like that, really sad situations like that you find people are in because they can't afford, you know, they can't afford to live anymore the way that they should, you know.
Well, you know, I think that's a really valid point. I mean, we saw in the clip earlier, Sister Rukhsana, you know, someone talking about, is crime becoming a little bit more acceptable? Is it more acceptable now that we're seeing even 15-year-olds who are engaging in, you know, really serious crimes? What's your take on this? Do you think that crime is becoming more acceptable in society?
I definitely think there is a sort of it's becoming normal. It's become normalised. You know, there is a sense of sort of no accountability in society. If you don't get caught doing it, then there's nothing to really prevent you from doing it. And therefore, that is an idea which is filtering down to the children. And I think it completely has become something that's commonplace in society. It's accepting somebody knows somebody that's been to jail. You know, that sort of thing. The stigma that was previously attached to it is no longer there, really.
Absolutely. What's your take on this, Sister Zainab?
Definitely, I completely agree with that. That we do feel this sense of immoral behaviour or bad acts becoming increasingly acceptable. I mean, of course, it doesn't mean that crime didn't happen before. Of course, it did. But it's the growing nature of it, the growing violent nature of it, and even the acceptability of it. It's not something that is seen, looked down upon in society generally.
Well, we were talking, you know, I mentioned in the introduction that we are going to talk about how Islam deals with this problem. Sister Ayan, let's come to you. How does Islam prevent criminal behaviour?
Well, you know, if we look back to our rich Islamic history, we find that we had a system in place that sort of prevented, you know, like say, for example, the reason why people are stealing today is because they can't afford to feed themselves. There was a system in place that made sure that everyone's basic needs were met. So everyone had a home, everyone had food, and everyone had clothing. These were things that had to be absolutely met. There was no question about it. I mean, we have, you know, hadiths of Umar radiallahu anhu, who used to wander the streets when he was Khalif, making sure that no one was hungry, no one was going hungry, because he felt this sense of accountability that he needed to look after his citizens, as well as the fact that, you know, this system had a very good social system in which it taught people beliefs and morals that were contrary to probably what we have today. So, you know, anybody who did anything that was alien to that was just, you know, it wasn't really heard of that much. And even the fact that we had a punishment system in place to as a deterrent from people committing these crimes, it showed that, you know, Islam is a comprehensive and holistic system that unfortunately we don't have.
Absolutely. Well, we know that the Quran does talk about enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. That's, you know, a concept which is kind of prevalent throughout the verses of the Quran. Sister Zainab, I mean, as Sister Ayad mentioned, some people might say that, you know, Islam has a very, very strict and a stringent judicial system. Well, what's your take on that?
I think when the Islamic punishment system is taken out of context, it seems really extreme. But we have to understand it in stages and see it as part of a wider kind of economic system, or a social and economic system with everything together. So first of all, when Islam says that when a person's needs are being met, then these punishment systems come into effect. When you have people who are starving, people who, you know, are struggling to live and to feed their families, you know, subhanAllah, how can they and they wouldn't be they wouldn't be punished in this manner. So first of all, their needs need to be met. First of all, second of all, you need to understand that the Islamic punishment system, especially the hudud, which is only a part of the entire system, is something that is a preventative measure. It's something to scare people away from that action. And it also represents how Islam views things. That there's no, you know, like we were just talking about the rubbing away of what is really bad. It is a constant and standard thing that no media outlet or whatever can mess with. But also, when you look at the specific actions in terms of punishments, like maybe cutting the hand of the thief and things like that, it is really amazing just how high the burden of proof is. So, or even the requirements that a person needs to have fulfilled in order for that to happen. You know, the person needs to be sane, needs to be over the age of puberty. The thing that was stolen needs to be over 4.374 grams of gold, which is like 125 pounds, around that. It needs to be taken from a secure place. So, no, you know, if I was to take this cup, it wouldn't apply. You know, there's so many, and there's many other things that come into play.
So there's lots of kind of areas around that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think it's about raising awareness, but at the same time, on a more practical level, Sister Rukhsana, let's come to you. A take-home practical message for all our viewers out there. How can we help to create a safer family environment?
I think individually it's difficult to change policy and law. So fundamentally the obligation is on the government in place to make their citizens feel secure and safe. However, there are certain things that we can do. One of them, I think, is mothers and fathers and people who have siblings. It is your primary responsibility to make sure that your child understands the difference of right and wrong. We are seeing criminals, the age of criminals falling, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to make sure that you are handling that with your own children or your own brothers and your sisters. Secondly, what I would advise is there needs to be some level of community cohesion. There is a very stark sort of atmosphere within London especially, which is, you know, it promotes individualism and sort of looking out for yourself. But where Islam preaches that there should be a sense of community, there should be, you know, a far-reaching family that you can go to.
We should all support one another. You know, there's a hadith about how a Muslim is, you know, a supporter of another, and I think that concept, you're absolutely right, it can lead to really strong communities.
People need to look out for each other, basically, and make sure that they are sort of safeguarding each other's interests within the community. Definitely. And I think that's very important.
Sister Ayam, what's your take on this?
Absolutely. I mean, just to follow on from what Sister Rukhsana is saying, is that, you know, we all have a responsibility